Hello. So today I wanted to make a video about how to ace your job interviews. So this video is targeted towards pretty much any type of job interview in a corporate company or a startup. The process is very similar regardless of the industry or the actual position. So if you're looking to convert your interview to an actual offer, continue watching. So let's get started. What do employers typically look for during the interview process? So in another video, I explained how to land an actual interview, in your resume, you have to demonstrate knowledge, experience, and credentials. So this is the stage where you've already landed the interview, and now you're trying to prove to the employer that you have the required technical skills, the behavioral skills. Are you able to communicate very well? And whether you're a culture fit for the actual company. So these are the four things that they'll assess during this process. So the stages of an interview are pretty much similar regardless of the position again or the company. They will usually be broken down into four different pieces. And the first piece or the stage being the screening stage. Once you get past the screening stage, you'll go through a rigorous technical interviews. That could be one round, it could be two rounds. Typically, it's 1 to 2 rounds. After that, you typically go through a final behavioral interview. This is usually the longer one where they assess uh, whether you have the right soft skills and whether you're a culture fit to the actual company. And lastly, this stage, the final stage, they usually try selling to you. This is usually a good sign that you will probably land the offer, but it's not over at that point yet. So even during the selling to you process, you typically want to show engagement and interest towards the company. Cool. So let's elaborate on what the screening process is usually and how to increase your probability of getting through this round. So the screening process is usually a 15 to 30-minute phone call with the recruiter. In this process, you could typically expect the questions along the lines of starting off with a tell me about yourself. So this question, a lot of times people will overshare. They'll start telling their high school experience, their childhood. That's not what the interviewer wants. They're typically looking for your career. Tell me about your career more. Like the question can be rephrased. They want to find out about your recent aspects of your career, not necessarily what you did 20, 30 years ago. They care more about what you did 3 to 4 years ago. So, if you're a new grad, you typically want to talk about your university experience and any internships that you did. If you've been in the industry for 3 to 4 years, you typically want to talk about the first or the last 2 to 3 years of your career. Secondly, they kind of ask you, why are you looking for a job? So this is important for the interviewer to ask you because they're trying to understand that, you weren't fired for being an asshole at your company, or you aren't looking for a new job for the wrong reasons. So this is a trick question for you, and typically you wouldn't want to answer honestly depending on your situation. So if your situation is that you're just looking for a new job, you're kind of bored of your old position and you're trying to explore other aspects of your career, then just become 100% honest, tell them what's going on. If you got fired for low performance, if you got fired for other reasons, then try to keep that to yourself. Share as much as you can to the interviewer, but don't be completely honest with them. I know this sounds like bad, like, okay, don't be honest with your recruiter, but it is important to keep some aspects private. It might have been that the situation you were in dictated the outcome, and you had no, you know, you had no control over it. So just don't lie to the recruiter. Just keep some information to yourself. So the third thing is, why do you feel you're a right fit for this position? So this one's really important because it helps the recruiter really understand your confidence level of whether you can actually do the job. So during this process, to really answer whether you're right fit for the position, you have to demonstrate confidence. You have to demonstrate a good understanding of what the position is and what value you can provide to the company, because the company wants someone who can hit the ground running. The company rarely Most companies rarely want to invest in like training someone up from the bottom. They typically want someone who already has some level of experience or has some level of understanding. I know it sucks, but that's just how the industry is, and it is shifting towards helping people grow. But as of right now, to increase your odds of landing the position and landing the offer, you have to show confidence. You have to show that you know what you're doing, and you have to provide value to them. And the last thing that they typically ask is, how familiar are you about the company? So this shows interest. So if you did some research prior to the actual interview and you really took the initiative to understand what the company actually does, that shows initiative, and that really gives you an edge over other candidates. So do your research, learn as much as you can about the company, and ask questions if you don't know something about the company or if something is hazy. Ask questions, show interest. This is a really good sign for recruiters. There may be a few technical questions, but remember, you're talking to a recruiter who might not be as technical as someone who's actually working on the position. So the questions typically are very high level, and chances are you will be able to answer them, assuming you have some experience or at least some understanding of what the position is. And one thing that usually happens is the recruiter will ask you for a salary range. Uh, do not give them a salary range right away. If they're very persistent on you answering this question, then give them a range, but give them a very vague range. Like if you're looking for a job that pays 80K, say like 70 to 90 or 60 to 100, give them a big range. This is because at this point in time, neither side has really any negotiating power. The candidate doesn't really know that much about the business. They can do their own research, but they don't know whether this is the right fit for them. And the recruiter doesn't know whether the candidate is the right fit for this position. So they don't really know what number to pick. So they're trying to get you to say the lowest number at this point. Try not to say a number at all. Leave that for the end when you actually have negotiating power. Okay, so let's go a little bit more in depth in the technical interviews. So this process will be different for every position, depending on whether you're applying for a software engineering role, whether you're applying for a marketing role. It'll be, targeted towards your specific role. For example, if you're applying for a software engineering role, during the technical interview, you will typically be asked to solve a coding challenge. After that, you may be asked to design a system and sort of implement it. Whereas if you are applying for a marketing position, you might be asked to design a strategy for an event to increase engagement of your customers. So completely different types of questions, but ultimately what they're trying to do is they're trying to understand your technical skills, whether you know what tools to use and whether you're able to adapt to different problems and come up with creative solutions. So in general, well, first of all, this is your opportunity to demonstrate that you are capable of doing the job. And in general, you can be asked or expected to know the following. Can you design a solution related to the position? So, if you're looking for a cloud development position, can you design a cloud solutions architecture to address a problem or any scaling issue that they're having? Uh, are you able to solve cases related to the position? So solving cases is typically more towards non-technical positions such as sales or marketing. So in this case, they will usually give you cases. A scenario, let's say an irate customer is really frustrated with the product. What steps would you take? How would you solve it? And they might throw curveballs and change up the story a little bit to see how you adapt to situations. So that's typically more prevalent to non-technical positions. So if you're applying for software engineering roles, you might not see these types of questions. But if you are applying for sales or marketing roles, then you probably will. The third thing is, can you demonstrate the use of technical tools to solve a particular problem? So this will literally be an actual implementation phase where they ask you to implement something and use the right tools to solve the problem. So if you're applying for a software engineering role, they might ask you to actually build out a software for a certain thing. For example, build me a website for e-commerce platform, and then they'll walk you through it. They'll try to understand what approaches you took and why you took them. Again, if you're in a marketing role, they might ask you to, design an advertisement and then walk you through it and what you like, trying to figure out what tools you're going to use and blah, blah, blah. So it's really important that you know about the tools and you know how to use the tools, even if the tools that the company uses itself is different than the ones you use, as long as you know an alternative or something around something similar to what they use, that's also fine. Again, you can also be asked about high level understanding of the concepts required for the position. This is really, really important and a very common question. So let's say you're applying to Amazon, and the AWS side of things where it's a lot of cloud computing. Then a question that you may be asked is, can you explain cloud computing to a non-technical person? So this demonstrates your high level understanding and how you're able to convert that high level understanding and help others understand. And the last thing is, are you comfortable using the tools and designing solutions? So this is really important. If you are able to demonstrate that you are comfortable and confident, it gives you a huge negotiating boost, and it helps you land the offer and even negotiate a higher salary than you would have gotten. Lastly, you will be given the opportunity to ask questions about the company during the technical interview phase. Make sure you prepare questions prior to the actual interview. This is extremely important because let's say you didn't do too well during the technical interview phase. The fact that you asked the questions and the fact that you showed interest towards learning more about the company, the technical recruiter might actually overlook your mistakes, some edge cases that you might have missed. They might overlook that simply because of the enthusiasm and interest you showed for the company. And it's most important at this stage because the technical interview might actually be, the pretty much the hardest part. You might be a great talker, you might be able to get around social situations, but if you don't have the technical knowledge, it becomes really hard to get employers to trust you. So showing enthusiasm, showing interest always works in your favor. Cool. So if you're past the technical interview, chances are you'll probably now go through a set of behavioral interviews. This process tends to be similar regardless of the position because this is gauging your soft skills rather than your technical skills, which is pretty much very, very standard across the industry. This is your opportunity to demonstrate your soft skills again. So typically employers also use this opportunity to ensure you are a culture fit for the position. And the questions you can typically expect in this stage is, tell me about a time when you disagreed with your manager. Tell me about a time when you had to meet a tight deadline. Tell me about a time when you took a calculated risk. Also, tell me about a time when you had to face a difficult situation. So as you can see, while these questions are very similar in format, they're asking completely different scenarios. And don't be fooled. These are trick questions designed to weed out people that are not a culture fit and people that are not able to adapt to different situations. So to answer these questions, you really want to come up with a strategy and you really want to practice answer these questions beforehand because coming up with stories on the fly is extremely hard. You can be the best at coming up with the stories, and if you're put on the spot, you might struggle. So how do you answer these questions? So what I like to use is the Amazon STAR format. So you want to answer your behavioral questions using the Amazon STAR format. So STAR format is basically a situation. So you start off by answering what the situation was. So what was the situation you or your previous employer faced? What tasks were involved? So that is a task. That's the second thing you want to talk about. The third thing you want to say is the action you took. So this is where you say I did this, this, and this, why I took those actions, and and then lastly you want to talk about the results of those actions. So what happened after? Was it a good outcome? Was it a bad outcome? So again, let's for example go through one of these questions and use the STAR format. So tell me about a time when you disagreed with your manager. So we were going through the migration of users, and my manager wanted me to just drop all the users instead of migrating them and force them to sign up again. So that was the situation. The task was to essentially migrate over the users, and I didn't think that was a good idea. I didn't think that deleting all the users and forcing them to recreate it was a good user experience. So the action that I took was I came up with a bunch of reasons on why this was a bad idea and why customers might be affected and how we should mitigate that by essentially actually migrating the user from the old authentication service to the new authentication service in a seamless manner where the user didn't even know what's happening. The user has no idea that we just changed our authentication service. From the user's perspective, nothing changed. So I justified that, I provided reasoning, and ultimately the manager, you know, while they had their own like reasoning for just dropping the users, to save time, they ultimately realized that yeah, it's a bad user experience and that we should actually take a better approach by migrating the users over through a more seamless process. And the results were the users were unaffected. The users didn't even realize that we changed authentication services, and they continued using our product. So the result was great. Users weren't affected. We had our solution implemented, and users were migrated over. So yeah, that's how you typically answer behavioral questions. You want to come up with these stories beforehand. Do not make up stories. So that's one thing that people do. They make up stories. It's very hard to answer questions when you make stories up, because the interviewer will, throw curveballs and say like, "Oh, why didn't you do this instead?" If you made up the story, you might not even like have any answer for that, for those type of questions and for those type of curveballs. So come up with actual stories that happened in the past with positive outcomes. That way you can elaborate and expand on it as needed. So after the technical and behavioral stages, chances are now you probably are a very strong candidate and the company starts selling to you. So if you are at the stage where the company is selling to you, congratulations, you are very close to receiving an offer. Uh, but do not assume you have an offer in the bag and stop putting an effort into this stage. Continue putting effort into the stage and treating it as if like you're still trying your best to get to that offer stage. Usually this will be scheduled with an executive, typically the founder if it's a smaller startup, or maybe the director or one of the execs, maybe the VP of engineering if you're applying for software engineering positions. They will hop on a call with you and they will try to tell you why you should join this company, how you can grow here, and they'll give you a lot of different reasonings. All just it's a lot of buzzwords and like, oh, we're disrupting the industry, you can be part of something big. It's to get you to essentially accept an offer were you to be given one. While majority of the talking now will be done by the recruiter or the executive, you are still expected to show interest. If you stop showing interest during the stage, they might realize that you might not even accept an offer, so they might not extend one over. And then this is your chance to show enthusiasm and interest towards the position and the company. So, if you are really, really showing enthusiasm, the chances are the offer that they extend you might even be higher. They really, really like you as a candidate. You have the technical abilities, you have the behavioral skills. Now you're also enthusiastic about the company. Like, it's a no-brainer for the business. They really want you to join. Cool. So after this stage, let's put it all together. So what do you need to do to essentially land an offer? So you need to prepare for the technical portion of the interview. This is probably the earliest stage. Learn the technical jargon for your position. Learn the tools specified in the job description. So I just wanted to quickly show you what I mean by that. So let's go here, full stack developer at this company. They're looking for someone with a relational database experience with Go, React, and AWS. But you don't need to be advanced in either of those tools as long as you have a high level understanding and are able to make some basic projects. That's a huge bonus. So yeah, learn the technical jargon, learn the tool specified, even learn alternatives. If you have an alternative to the tools they use, mention that and explain how the concepts are very similar and how you can adapt. And then look them up on Glassdoor and see what type of technical questions you can expect. A lot of people forget that Glassdoor exists. So just go on Glassdoor, go to the interview section for the company and see like the questions that they get asked, and you can practice based on those questions, and it gives you a huge advantage. Uh, Prepare for the behavioral portion as well. So after you've gone through the technical portion, now you focus more towards the behavioral portion. Practice coming up with positive stories and adapt them for each question. So again, go through the Amazon Star format, come up with different stories and scenarios that had positive outcomes, and be ready to adapt them for each question. Don't just lie flat out and make up a story, but adapt your existing stories to the question. And that's a skill that you will start gaining once you do more and more of these interviews. Pick recent situations you remember vividly to better answer questions, because recruiters will throw curveballs. They will ask for details, and answer the questions in the Amazon star format. And lastly, remain engaged during the selling to you stage. It provides you with more negotiating power and makes the company excited to extend an offer to you. So you want the company to be excited to extend an offer to you. You want to show them that you're valuable, you're able to provide the required skills and knowledge for the position, and that you would be a great culture fit. Do all those things, and they will give you your maximum offer right off the bat. You may not even need to negotiate. If you really like my content, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to keep up to date with the content. Thank you for watching.